Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5. You are almost halfway there. Congratulations. I know that you've been uncovering a lot. We've had 2 weeks of going out into the world, meeting your purposeful titans, getting feedback from the 10 people in your community, and then 2 weeks of going within, meeting your IntelliKey and your end of life tribute. And now it's time for the really fun work. When I say fun, I mean like not fun at all, but the most rewarding. And this is actually my favorite part of the purpose discovery journey because this is the longest lasting, meaning that you can have insights, you can have experiences, peak experiences in these purpose discovery exercises. You can do IntelliKey until you're blue in the face. You can get something new. Oh wow, this is great. Oh, I'm kind of fully get my story, my craft, and it doesn't really add up to a hill of beans. And the reason is because purpose is, Tim Kelly says like 80-90% of it is about embodiment, is about manifestation, about moving into the world, having your life look like your purpose, having your career look like your purpose, and eventually having the world look like your purpose. And so that all begins in these next 2 weeks. And that's looking at the resistance that we have to living our purpose. Now, there are easily a dozen, if not 2 dozen voices inside your head that can be considered resistance. Now, because you're all unique, because we're all unique, we can't explore each of them, not in the next 2 weeks anyways. But we're going to explore the top 5, the 5 that probably comprise 90 to 95% of the chatter or the limiting beliefs or the sources of the reasons that keep you from living your life's purpose. And this was the part of the journey that I resisted. So when I did this work with Jonathan, I had to redo my critic like 3 times, my skeptic two times, my risk manager 2. I mean, I was just like, because I resisted it. I resisted the resistance exercise, and there's good reason for that. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to try to anyways. Because what we're doing is affecting a power shift from a life that's totally driven by ego, so the fears and desires of the ego, to one that's more of a balanced integration between ego and soul. Now, on the surface, ego doesn't like this idea. Ego does not want you to get to know it so that you can kind of institute your reorganization. It does not want that. But it actually does. Because soul and ego are like, they're like the lover and the beloved. The soul needs the ego to see its expression in the world. And the ego needs the soul to know what to do, to get the clarity, the direction. So they're friends here. And now we've begun to move you into a high definition understanding of your soul's purpose, right? Now we're going to start to awaken a high definition understanding of your default purpose or of your ego's purpose. And the reason for that is we need to get to know both of them so we can kind of stitch them back together in a more fair and balanced way, a way that's going to work, that's going to have your soul be more expressed, have your ego be more effective, and to have all the results. So you all know the science of purpose. Long life, more leadership, more wealth, better relationships, more attractive. Like the whole thing we all want, the life we want, lies inside of this marriage. And so now we have to do the second part and really get to know all those voices of resistance. So just briefly, these are how Tim Kelly describes them. So you have your critic. This is the one that thinks you don't have what it takes, that kind of makes fun of you, diminishes you, thinks that there's something wrong with you. You don't have the grit, the resilience. You're too distracted. That kind of voice. Then you have your skeptic, who doesn't trust anyone and doesn't actually trust that reality is hospitable. In a sense, it'll say like, "Oh, your purpose can't be done. It just, only a few people get to live the purpose, not you, pal." Or the world is just too messed up. Or to actually live your purpose, you have to trust people, and you can't trust people, so you don't get to live your purpose. You have your wounded child, and that's the part that says, "I don't like pain. I don't like change. I don't like conflict." It's a part that just kind of wants to run away and zone out. wants to just watch Netflix and forget that this whole conversation exists. Oh, I should mention the skeptic also likes to doubt the existence of soul and purpose. So note that if that's been coming up for you over the last 4 weeks, that's normal. That's what the skeptic does. Its job is to doubt that this thing has any legs whatsoever. Then you have your protector, and the protector hates risk, hates change and risk, basically. And protector is really concerned about your physical, emotional, and financial well-being. So if purpose starts to feel like it could lead to a diminishment of that, the protector will step in. So you're going to get to know all these different parts. And as I mentioned, these parts are not bad. You're not bad for having them. You need a healthy ego to survive. Your soul needs a healthy ego to be fully expressed. And we're just going to get to know them. We're going to get to understand these little rascals and then transform them. So, I mentioned that this was my favorite part of my purpose journey. And I had this insane cacophony of voices inside. And I mean, my critic told me I wasn't smart enough, that, it had me spend basically 10 years reading the classics, reading philosophy and literature and spirituality, that I needed to do every personal development program I could get my hands on so I could be prepared enough, so I could get it right and be perfect and have like the perfect thing. And it really just says like, now's not your time. Hold on, read another book, do another program, get another training, then you'll be ready. Now my skeptic is, I was inside of my skeptic's anger for probably 10 years. Like, this guy is like Tyler Durden. He wants to destroy capitalism. He wants to destroy all men. He wants to destroy anything that smacks of the American dream. He doesn't believe it. He doubts. He doubts that it's possible to save humanity. He doubts that there's anything good in the world, that it's all been built on exploitation and genocide and rape and murder. He's an activist, but mine's more of a loner as well. Like, I call him the Marlboro Man, and he just doesn't believe it's possible. He just wants to go back to the land, be by himself, be content in his anger. Now my image consultant, this guy wants to take everything that my critic's done. So the critic helped me do, like, achieve and read and write books and all that kind of stuff, and show it off. Like, hey, look at how great Brandon is. Isn't he brilliant? Isn't he courageous? Doesn't he look good? And that's probably what your image consultant is doing to a certain extent. Now, I call mine actually Bob, after my dad, because my dad is very good at managing perceptions. And there's a model that describes these kind of internal parts called the internal family systems model. And the reason they say that, family, is because oftentimes your parents are influences on these parts. So my protector is my mom. She's really all about safety and prudence, and my image consultant is my dad. So as I mentioned, my protector is my mom, and if you're like me, you actually have one of these parts that's kind of weak. So for mine, my protector was pretty weak, meaning like I took a lot of risks from a very early age, like as a toddler, just electrocute myself, burn myself, steal this, deface that, lie here. I mean, I was just a madman, and that was true throughout high school, college, my 20s. It still is to a certain extent. I feel, if I let my poorly developed protector govern things, I basically, spend every last dollar. Now your protector is probably different. Most people have a strong protector, and that's why it avoids the purpose conversation, because it doesn't want to lose your money, doesn't want to lose your job, doesn't want to lose your house, doesn't want to jeopardize your own personal well-being and the well-being of your family or the people that depend on you. Now, my wounded child, he's a total addict. Like he loves scotch and blow and sex, and I mean, that's just what he wants. He doesn't want to be responsible. Doesn't want to be have to endure the pain of being resilient, of having a purpose. Because purpose is not all pleasure, right? Like you've got to make sacrifices. And so, yeah, my wounded child, he loves mass quantities, all things, food, sex, booze, and in my late 20s, early 30s, I mean, I was getting, actually, I even know it was my late 20s. My late 20s, I was getting, that wounded child was covering up a lot of pain with scotch and ice cream, a lot of pain, and chewing tobacco for that matter, too. And so these were all real. Like I had all these people inside of me. And there's some other folks too. I mean, I had this Zen monk who was kind of like my critic, but he cared about spiritual purity. Um, and yeah, and I've got a pleaser that is kind of an offshoot of my image consultant, an offshoot of Bob. And this guy just wants everybody to be happy and just kind of bends over every time somebody asks something of him. So the thing is, I didn't know any of this was happening. I had no idea. I just thought, oh, that's just me. I'm Brandon. I had no idea that this kind of inner cacophony of voices was playing out. It's like, oh, I have some idiosyncrasies because if you think about them in isolation, they're all quite different, and yours are probably the same. But the result of these like parts working at cross purposes is that you don't get anything done. You don't feel good about yourself. You don't feel aligned. And so you don't even know what's possible when those voices get quiet. So that's how it was for me. So once I finished like the 6 weeks, and I, with my one-on-one clients, I work with folks for 6 weeks to get each one of these parts lined up. So I finished the 6 week process with Jonathan, and it was like, boom, like got clear, got free. Like I am 10 feet tall and anything's possible. And it wasn't that I had a lack of confidence or courage before, but I was inside of all this conflict, all this internal conflict. And as soon as that started to quiet down, and it's not that it doesn't come up, I still do work around my parts, but I now know where it comes from. And I don't make it mean that it's me. Like my identity, because of my purpose ritual, because of the purpose tree mandala and my vision board, my identity is rooted in soul. And this is just stuff that happens that I have to, circumstances I have to deal with. So what I'm able to do is just get a lot more done. And not that getting things done is the most important thing, but I didn't realize how little I was getting done because I was inside of all these conflicting narratives. And that's what lies ahead for you. You're going to get clear. And it begins this week. So you're going to get to know these 5 voices. Now, as I was sharing, without getting clear, you end up believing these voices and you end up doing things that actually end up hurting you. And so today's quote is from Jesus of Nazareth. And this is from the Gospel of Thomas, part of the Gnostic Gospels that were discovered in the 1940s. So Jesus says, if you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Basically what it is, like, whether it's Jesus or somebody else, who knows? But what Jesus is laying down here is that if you unleash your soul is your redemption. Like that will be the key to heaven on earth. Having an impact, loving yourself, loving your neighbor, being healthy, having great relationships, having a big impact, being a leader, all that. And if you don't, what's going to happen is that purpose-sized hole is going to get filled with the desires and fears of those parts. And so, your critic will push you to an insane end in one way, shape, or form. Your skeptic will eventually isolate you because it doesn't trust anybody. Your image consultant will have you completely do like surrender your desires, your own truth, your own wants, your own needs for other people. And you'll get exploited and taken advantage of. And when a child will have you indulge in behaviors that are unhealthy. So that purpose-sized hole gets filled. Now you get to choose: is it with? I mean, you're going to fill it with soul. Or you're going to keep letting these ego parts fill it. And my want, and the reason why you're here, is so we can move these ego parts out of the channel and allow soul to fill us. So you're going to do this default purpose exercise today. And this is based on the work of Tim Kelly, also Jonathan Gustin, Bill Plotkin, Richard Leder, Helen Sidra Stone, Richard Schwartz. Lots of people have contributed tremendously to this body of work that takes these internal egoic parts and moves them away, so you have a clear and wide channel for soul to come through. And so you're going to look at these 5 key voices over the next week. Every night you're going to journal, and you're going to look and see, okay, what happened today that I didn't like, or where I didn't feel good, or an interaction or an event happened that I didn't like. Then you're going to look at, okay, so which one of my voices was active during that? You know, where was that event showing up? Or which one of these voices was showing up in the event, and how were they showing up? So you're going to get a chance to look at all 5 of these voices each night and to see where they're showing up. Now, the next piece is that for each one of these events, you get to ask, how would my soul respond if my soul was leading instead of that voice? So the idea is, like, you're going to see a clear distinction between your soul's purpose and your default purpose. You're going to get to know each of these 5 parts and see the role that they're playing in your everyday experience. And for most of us, it's pretty ubiquitous. So be gentle with yourself. Everybody has this going on. All you're doing is putting a magnifying glass on it. So just because you see something doesn't mean you're bad or that something's wrong. It just means you're seeing something. Other folks who aren't doing this work or who haven't done it don't see it. So I wish you well. Keep doing your morning purpose ritual. And remember, you've got your powerful share. So pick somebody that you want to enlighten, that you want to connect with on a more deep and vulnerable level. We'll see you next week.